If your trim paint keeps drying with streaks, brush marks, or that uneven sticky look and it's enough to drive you crazy, you're definitely not alone. The hard truth is most people never even notice a bad paint job in the first place. But if you're someone who does notice these little details and you want your home's finishes to look truly well done, well, you've clicked on the right video, my friend. The bad news is that the secret to perfectly painted trim is all in technique that most tutorials never explain. But the good news is that once you know exactly what to do, achieving that smooth professional paint finish with a brush is totally doable, even for the most inexperienced DIYer. It all comes down to a repeatable process that works with the paint and not against it. So today I'm going to show you my simple 3-step process for brushing trim so you can finally stop ruining your trim paint. I'm working here in my powder room. It's the space from our remodel 3 years ago that I never fully finished. The heavy prep was done back then. After the carpenter installed all of my molding, I filled all the nail holes with wood filler, sanded it smooth, sprayed 2 coats of oil-based primer on it, sanded that primer smooth to 320 grit, and lastly, I caulked all the seams. And then life happened and the work paused. Until right now. So in this video, my focus isn't on the main prep, but it's on the most visible and often most challenging parts, which is applying the final coats of paint smoothly with a brush. But all of that prep work is extremely important. Before we start brushing, here are a few things I need you to understand about how paint actually works. Paint will always take the exact shape of whatever is underneath it. If the surface is rough or uneven, the final coat will reflect those same imperfections. So if your trim currently has a bad paint job, that must be fixed first. The texture will need to be sanded down flat and smooth to have a good starting point to add your final coats to. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, if there is a chance of lead-based paint in your home, always do a lead-based paint testing kit before sanding or disturbing the surface. If it comes back positive, or if you're in any doubt, just call a professional. One of the most popular marketing angles as of late is self-leveling paint, and I know we've all heard of self-leveling paint and its supposed magic qualities. And I get it, it sounds amazing. It sounds like you can just slap it onto the surface without any consideration and it'll cover all of our sins and look great in the end. But self-leveling paint is not magic, and I think that consumers have hyped it up into something it's not. So self-leveling paint, which what I'm talking about here specifically is what I'll be using in this demonstration, which is Benjamin Moore Advance. It is marketed and sold as a self-leveling paint. Everybody on social media, it's like a one run-on sentence. I'm using Benjamin Moore Advance. It's self-leveling paint. So this paint and others like it can only level themselves out a small amount while that paint is wet and workable, and that window of time begins to close almost immediately after that paint is applied to the surface. So application speed needs to be one of our main goals. And we as applicators are the ones responsible for giving that paint a fighting chance to be able to level itself out onto the surface into a smooth and beautiful finish. So logically, the fewer and the neater brush marks that we can leave behind, the better the chances that our finish will be beautiful after it's dry. So our job is quite simple. We have to load the paint onto the surface quickly. We have to lay it off so that it's smooth and nice and neat and even. And then we just have to walk away and leave it alone. And I like to call this process load, lay off, leave it. And once you start painting this way, you're going to be shocked at how much better your results are. So let me show you how to do it. I'm working with Benjamin Moore Advance, which is a high-quality waterborne enamel that does self-level beautifully when applied correctly. I'm using a combination of tools that each have their own job. This is a Stahlmeister round brush, and it's great for holding a generous amount of paint in the bristles and will glide over contoured surfaces like a champ. This brush is perfect for curved profiles of door and window casing and crown molding. I'll be using a high quality flat angled sash brush. This type of brush is great for laying off paint, also known as tipping off. I use laying off and tipping off terms interchangeably. This brush is great for leaving gentle, shallow brush marks behind, and the sharp point is great for precisely getting into inside corners and miters. I'll be using a 4-inch mini roller, and this is great for quickly getting paint onto large flat surfaces. I have a collection of fine grit sandpapers. I'll be using this fine sanding sponge and also this 400 grit sandpaper, tack cloths, a handy paint pail with liners, microfiber rags, mixing cups, and some water. And as usual, I'll have everything linked in the description below. The color I'm using is actually a Sherwin-Williams color that my Benjamin Moore retailer matched for me. So this is Sherwin-Williams Rocky River, but it is in Benjamin Moore Advance Paint in satin sheen. I'm adding 10% water to this paint to slightly reduce it. This makes the paint just a little bit thinner and easier to brush, and also helps it lay out more smoothly on the surface. I'm often asked about adding products like Floetrol, which are designed to extend the open time of water-based paints. And to be quite honest with you, I haven't used Floetrol in many years. I never loved the way it affected the durability of the finish once the paint dried, and because it does change the chemistry of the coating. If you are determined to use an extender, I'll link the one that I like better than Floetrol in the description below. It's an extender made by General Finishes. But in most normal conditions, simply adding about 10 to 12% water is more than enough to improve the brushability and extend the open time, unless you're working in extremely hot temperatures. I'm measuring everything in a graduated mixing cup so that the ratio stays accurate. I don't really like to guess when it comes to adding anything to paint, just because adding too much of anything can really start to affect how the finish performs. So measuring just means I can reproduce the exact same mixture later, whether that's for the second coat, touch-ups, future projects, whatever. And with the paint properly mixed, we are ready to begin. One key is learning to see trim not as one big whole piece, but as a series of small and manageable sections. Completing one section at a time keeps a wet edge, prevents overlap marks, and maintains a consistent finish. It also means being very intentional about where the paint goes. Only apply paint to the area which you have time to finish right now. If the paint dries before you return to it while wet, that texture will show through the final product unless you take the time to go back and sand it smooth again. I begin with the round brush to load the paint onto the surface quickly. The dense bristles carry more paint, and that transfers very smoothly across all of the detailed profiles. And once that paint is in place in my small workable section, I immediately switch to the flat and angled brush to gently lay off the surface, straightening the brush strokes and feathering the edges. One clear distinction about these two brushes: the round brush is applying paint to the surface. The flat brush is not applying paint to the surface. The bristles are wet with paint, but I am just using this to direct the paint where I want it to go. And then we leave it alone. You get it on, you get it pretty, walk away. Do not return to it until it's fully dry. So let me make a quick clarification here. You may notice that I am not being especially careful where I'm getting the paint onto the walls here, and that's intentional. I'm actually wallpapering this room on the ceiling and the walls, so I am not worried about getting the paint onto the walls. But if I were planning to paint these walls instead of wallpaper, I would absolutely tape the trim off so that I do not get my trim paint onto the walls, because then this sloppiness would be seen through my wall paint after, and that would look really terrible. So there's a reason why I'm being messy here, but if you are, again, not wallpapering, please do not get the paint onto the wall or your ceiling like I'm doing here. Tape it off. Anytime you're able in your wingspan to get from corner to corner, or to get the whole piece, it's best. So I needed to turn it around. I don't know if I'm in the shot. Whole piece, corner to corner. All right. Switch brushes.
my hand and come with me, because you look so fine that I really want to make you mine. I say you look so fine that I really want to make you mine. 4, 5, 6, come on and get your kicks. Now you don't need the money when you look like that, do you, honey? A big black boom.
You can see a couple places here where you're seeing the white primer through the paint, and that is perfectly normal. I know we've all heard it's best to do multiple lighter coats versus one or fewer heavy coats, and this is a perfect example of that. I've got a dark paint over a white primer. It's very unlikely you're going to get a full 100% coverage on your very first coat, so just leave it like that and you'll fix it on the second. Okay, now that the crown is done, we're going to move on to the window. It's a little bit more complicated. It's not just one straight piece of trim. There are different dimensions and different things. So we're going to need to break the window down. We're going to do it one piece at a time. So this is the upper sash, the lower sash, and then you've got the molding around it. This right here is part of the bottom sash. So in fact, what I'm gonna do is tape that off so I don't get any paint on this sash, because I'm gonna do this sash as a unit, this sash as a unit, and then I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of trim as each individual unit. Just to keep myself neat and tidy, I'm gonna go ahead and tape that off. I like to begin at the top of the window, and if you've never used a round brush on curved profiles, I can't recommend it enough. When I first started painting, I pretty much used one angled sash brush for literally everything I was painting. And sure, you can absolutely paint a contoured molding like this with a 2.5 or 3-inch angled sash brush, and it'll do the job. But I mean, you could also use your toothbrush if you really wanted to. Having the right tools that are best suited for the particular job you're performing is just so nice. So do yourself a favor and get one of these brushes for your contoured profiles, and you will be so glad you did. Notice how I'm treating this one top piece of trim as one unit, and I'm being very careful to follow the 45-degree angle at the corner. Do the best you can not to slap paint onto the adjoining pieces of trim, because chances are that the sloppy brush marks will be a bit too dry to level out by the time you're ready to paint that whole next piece of trim. So keep a wet rag on you to wipe up any rogue brush marks, because if you're a new painter, you won't be quick enough to keep a wet edge on the paint where you start and stop. So that will lead to texture in the final finish in the form of overlap marks, roping, stipple, all the above. Since my windows are wood, I need to paint the sashes. So after I've got the trim done, I'm going to open this window just a little bit and remove the tape that I put on. You'll see where my primer actually stops right there, but I'm not worried about it. Anyway, I'm going to let all of the paint that I just put on the window trim completely dry, and I will come back and do the sashes at a later time that you'll see right now. I know I'm backtracking just a tiny bit because I didn't show this earlier, but any time before I put paint onto any surface, I go over that surface again with a tack cloth. This just gets residual dust, hair off of the surface that you're painting. So best practice, keep a tack cloth with you at all times. Getting the lint off of your mini roller like this is so much faster and more effective than wrapping the roller up with tape. You're welcome. Since my baseboards have a large flat portion, I'm going to switch to using the mini roller so it gets the paint onto the surface faster. I'll use the round brush for the contoured top portion of the baseboard and then roll the paint onto the flat and then lay it off using my flat brush. Painting a smooth panel door like this is honestly one of the trickiest parts of painting an entire trim package. Keeping a perfect wet edge across all of the intersections is quite difficult, and my work is rarely as flawless as I wish it were, but working in this order gives the paint the best chance to level cleanly and it minimizes the overlap marks in the final finish. Do all of the panels first. I do the outside of the panel with a brush, and then I immediately roll the center of the panel. Once the paint is rolled on, take your flat brush and lay everything off, and do that to each and every panel first, being as careful as you can not to get paint brush marks onto the surrounding stiles or rails, which the rails are the horizontal pieces between panels and the stiles are the vertical pieces between the panels. If you do get brush marks on those areas, it's best to wipe them off before they dry.
1, 2, 3, take my hand and come with me because you look so fine that I really want to make you mine. I say you look so fine that I really want to make you mine. 4, 5, 6, come on and get your kicks. Now you don't need money with a face like that, do ya? Big black boots, long brown hair. She's so sweet with her, yeah, back stare. Well, I could see you were with me, but you were with another man, yeah. I know we ain't got much to say before I let you get away, yeah. I said, are you gonna be my girl?
Advance has a 16-hour recoat time, and I'll tell you from experience that it's best to follow the manufacturer's instructions, especially when using a dark color like this. Now, before I start painting the second coat, I like to closely inspect the first coat and fix any areas that need attention. If you have drips, runs, textured areas, anything that you can see with your eyes or feel with your fingers that you are not pleased with, now is the time to fix it. Luckily, I didn't have a single drip in this entire room, so I moved on to doing a quick scuff sand with an ultrafine sanding sponge. Now listen, I know that most folks would rather have a root canal than sand between coats of paint, but you're watching this video because you want to do this task the right way and you want your trim to look really good. Doing a quickie sand between first and second coats of paint will earn you bonus points and a gold star, so just do it. Alright, after you've sanded and contaminated your entire work area, you gotta clean it up. And if you ask me, this part sucks more than doing the sanding itself. But I digress. I like to use a horsehair attachment on my vacuum cleaner and go over every square inch of what was sanded. After that, wipe every square inch with a clean tack cloth and boom, we're ready for the second coat. I mixed my paint up the same way I did before. I added 12% of warm tap water, I mixed it up really well, and then I decanted it into my clean paint pail. Also, notice how I cleaned out my brushes instead of leaving them overnight wrapped in plastic. I just like how a clean brush feels. Sure, you can wrap it tightly in cling wrap if you're absolutely opposed to washing it out overnight, but you'd be happier with your second coat if you didn't. Whatever you do, do not put your brush into the freezer overnight, or even if it's a couple days later. That's completely unnecessary. And since you now know the load, lay off, leave it system, I'll just put together a fast montage of the second coat for your viewing pleasure.
Bet you
Well, let me know if this tutorial helps in your future trim painting endeavors, and if you found this one helpful, then you might also like this video too, as it goes deeper into how to paint cabinets. And if you want to see how this powder room turns out, be sure to subscribe because the full before and after video is coming very soon. Until next time, you guys, go paint something beautiful.
I'm a Gemini.